Picture this, a single breath of damp air, exhaled by a tourist thousands of miles from home, settling onto a painted limestone wall that has survived for over 3,000 years. In that moment, an ancient pigment, a story told in ochre and lapis lazuli, begins a slow, invisible decay. This is the quiet crisis happening right now, deep within the Valley of the Kings, a silent countdown that archaeologists are desperately trying to beat. We often think of these monumental tombs as eternal, carved from solid rock to last for an eternity, just as the pharaohs intended. But the truth is far more fragile. The very act of discovery, the footsteps of admirers, the slow change in humidity and temperature brought by modern visitors, all of it is conspiring to erase these masterpieces. It's a paradox of preservation. Our fascination is quite literally causing these wonders to fade from existence. But what if we could save them, not by locking them away, but by creating perfect, eternal digital copies? Welcome to the most ambitious archaeological project of our time, the race to digitize all of Egypt's tombs before they crumble. This isn't just about taking photographs. This is a full-scale technological rescue mission, a frantic, high-stakes effort to create a virtual duplicate of an entire civilization's sacred resting places. Teams armed with laser scanners, high-resolution cameras, and drones are working in sweltering heat, capturing every hieroglyph, every crack in the stone, every shadow in a burial chamber with an accuracy down to the millimeter. They are building a pixel-perfect afterlife for these ancient sites, ensuring that even if the physical structures eventually succumb to time, their digital souls will live on forever, accessible to anyone, anywhere in the world. This is a race against the clock where the sands of time are measured in decades, not centuries. So how exactly do you preserve a tomb without touching it? What incredible technologies are making this possible, and what breathtaking secrets hidden for millennia are being revealed in the process? This journey will take us from the deepest, most famous tombs to the forgotten burial shafts only now being mapped, revealing a story of human ingenuity rising to meet one of history's greatest challenges. We are witnessing a pivotal moment, a bridge between the ancient world and the digital future, and the outcome will determine what we leave for generations to come. This is more than archaeology, it's a digital resurrection, and you are about to see how it's done. To grasp the sheer urgency of this digital rescue mission, you first have to understand the powerful and relentless forces arrayed against these ancient structures. We are not just fighting the gentle passage of time, but a perfect storm of modern environmental pressures. One of the most significant changes came with the completion of the Aswan High Dam in the 1970s. While it tamed the Nile's floods and brought electricity to millions, it also fundamentally altered the microclimate of the entire river valley. The water table rose, pushing moisture up through the very bedrock. Inside the tombs, this translated into a dramatic and sustained increase in humidity. For paintings that have endured in a stable, dry desert environment for millennia, this new dampness is catastrophic. It encourages the growth of destructive microbes and fungi, which feast on the ancient organic binders in the paint, causing vibrant colors to flake away in tiny, irreversible fragments. Compounding this issue is a fascinating but destructive process known as salt crystallization. The groundwater itself is rich in salts. As this moisture seeps into the tomb walls and then evaporates, the salts are left behind, forming crystals within the microscopic pores of the limestone. You can think of it like water freezing in a crack in the pavement. As these salt crystals grow, they exert immense pressure from within, slowly but surely prizing the stone apart from the inside out. This leads to the spalling or peeling of entire sections of decorated wall, taking priceless hieroglyphs with them. It is a silent, invisible war of chemistry and physics being waged on a microscopic level, with the very fabric of history losing ground every single day. Then, of course, there is the impact of our own admiration. The Valley of the Kings receives millions of visitors each year, and while each person's contribution is small, the cumulative effect is enormous. The simple act of breathing in an enclosed space releases moisture and carbon dioxide, altering the tomb's atmosphere. Body heat raises the temperature, and the constant flow of people brings in dust and subtle vibrations. Over decades, these factors have taken a visible toll. In some of the most famous tombs, like that of Seti I or Nefertari, areas that were vibrant a century ago have noticeably faded. The pressure is so intense that many tombs now operate on a rotating schedule or are closed to the public entirely, a necessary but heartbreaking decision that highlights the severity of the problem. This isn't merely about preserving beautiful artwork, it is about safeguarding irreplaceable primary sources. These tombs are libraries carved in stone, holding the only original records of religious beliefs, astronomical knowledge, and daily life from one of humanity's greatest civilizations. Once a wall crumbles or a pigment fades, that chapter of our shared story is gone forever. This alarming decay is not a distant, abstract threat, but a vivid reality playing out within the very tombs that have captivated the world for generations. Perhaps no site better exemplifies this fragility than the most famous of them all, the tomb of Tutankhamun. When Howard Carter first peered into the burial chamber in 1922, he was met with what he described as wonderful things, a breathtaking assemblage of gold and color. Today, a century of visitors has irrevocably altered that scene. The once vibrant paintings on the walls depicting the young king's journey to the afterlife have suffered from fluctuating humidity and the presence of carbon dioxide from human breath. Conservators have noted a troubling darkening of the white pigments and a subtle but steady fading of the yellows and reds, a change that is painstakingly documented but nearly impossible to reverse. The legendary curse of the pharaohs seems to have a modern counterpart, the slow, silent erosion caused by our own presence. The problem extends far beyond a single, iconic chamber. Throughout the Valley of the Kings, the very geology is shifting. The bedrock itself, a limestone formation known as the Theban Hills, is crisscrossed with natural fissures. Seasonal temperature swings and the subtle but persistent vibrations from nearby roads and urban development are exacerbating these weaknesses. In the magnificent tomb of Seti I, one of the largest and most elaborately decorated in the valley, you can see alarming cracks snaking across ceilings and walls. These are not static scars, they are active wounds widening almost imperceptibly each year, threatening to bring down sections of intricate artwork that have survived for more than 3,000 years. It is a stark reminder that these are not sealed time capsules but dynamic structures engaged in a constant, losing battle with their environment. And the danger is profoundly democratic. It shows no favoritism between the tombs of kings and those of nobles. In fact, the lesser-known burial sites may be in even greater peril. Many tombs of high officials located in areas like the Theban necropolis across the river from modern-day Luxor were constructed with mud brick and painted plaster, materials far more susceptible to moisture and salt damage than the carved stone of royal tombs. These sites often lack the resources for continuous monitoring or climate control systems, leaving them to silently succumb. A beautifully painted scene of daily life in a noble's tomb can be destroyed in a single season by a flash flood, a rising water table, or even the burrowing of animals. Their obscurity makes them no less valuable. They offer intimate glimpses into the lives of the non-royal elite, details that the grandiose royal tombs often omit. The loss of any one of them is like losing a unique page from a history book, a story that vanishes forever without a digital copy to tell its tale. Faced with this silent, multi-front assault, the only viable solution is a form of preservation that doesn't fight the physics of decay but transcends them entirely. This brings us to the heart of the mission, the creation of a digital ark. But what does it truly mean to digitize an ancient tomb? It's a common misconception that this is simply an advanced form of photography, a high-tech slideshow. The reality is so much more profound. This process is about capturing the soul of a place, about building a perfect, immutable replica in the digital realm, a twin so precise that it can be studied, measured, and even visited long after the original has turned to dust. The foundation of this digital twin is built with light and lasers, primarily through a technology known as LiDAR, which stands for light detection and ranging. Imagine teams of specialists moving slowly through a burial chamber, not with tape measures and sketchpads, but with tripod-mounted scanners that look like something from a science fiction film. These devices emit millions of invisible laser pulses every second. Each pulse travels to the wall, the ceiling, or an artifact, and then bounces back to the scanner. By precisely measuring the time it takes for each pulse to return, the scanner can calculate the exact distance to that point, building up a breathtakingly detailed point cloud, a constellation of individual data points in three-dimensional space. This cloud contains the precise geometry of the entire chamber, capturing every contour, every crack, every subtle undulation in the stone with an accuracy down to a few millimeters. It's like creating a skeletal framework for the digital tomb, an exact wireframe model of reality, but a skeleton needs skin. This is where photogrammetry comes in. While the LiDAR scanner maps the shape, a separate team, or sometimes the same scanner equipped with a high-resolution camera, captures the surface. They take thousands of overlapping photographs from every conceivable angle under carefully controlled lighting. Sophisticated software then analyzes these images, identifying common points and stitching them together to create a seamless, photorealistic texture. This texture is then digitally draped over the LiDAR point cloud. The result is a fully textured 3D model that you can zoom into, rotate, and explore from any angle on a computer screen. The level of detail is staggering. You can see the individual brushstrokes left by an ancient artist, the tool marks of a stonecutter, even the subtle variations in the limestone that are completely invisible to the naked eye. The final crucial layer is hyperspectral imaging. This goes far beyond what human vision can perceive. Our eyes see only three bands of light: red, green, and blue. Hyperspectral cameras can capture hundreds of bands, from the near-infrared to the ultraviolet. Why does this matter? Because these different wavelengths of light interact with materials in unique ways. A pigment that looks uniform to us might reflect infrared light in a pattern that reveals a hidden underdrawing, a preliminary sketch made by the artist before the final painting was applied. Faded hieroglyphs that have become indistinguishable from the background stone can suddenly leap into view under specific light spectra. This technology is essentially allowing researchers to read texts and see images that haven't been visible for centuries, uncovering erased cartouches of a pharaoh who fell from favor or revealing the technical secrets of ancient Egyptian painters. This isn't just preservation, it's active discovery, using the digital process to see more than anyone has seen since the tomb was sealed. So this digital preservation effort, this creation of a perfect twin, relies on a suite of technologies that work in concert, but one stands out as the true workhorse, the foundation upon which everything else is built. That is LiDAR. To understand its power, you have to move past the idea of a simple camera. A camera captures light as we see it, a two-dimensional representation. LiDAR, on the other hand, builds reality from the ground up, one laser pulse at a time. The principle is beautifully simple, yet the execution is extraordinarily complex. A scanner mounted on a tripod is placed in the center of a burial chamber. It begins to rotate, emitting an invisible, eye-safe laser beam that fires millions of pulses per second. Each pulse is a tiny spear of light traveling at, well, the speed of light. When that pulse hits a surface, the carved surface of a sarcophagus, the painted curve of a ceiling, the rough texture of a far wall, it bounces back. The scanner's sensor measures the exact time it takes for that pulse to make the round trip. Since we know the speed of light with absolute precision, this time measurement translates directly into an exact distance. Do this a few million times from a single position, and you begin to build a constellation of points, each one a precise coordinate in three-dimensional space. This is what's known as a point cloud. Now picture that point cloud. At first, it might look like a sparse starfield on a computer screen, but as the scanner is moved to different positions throughout the tomb, capturing data from every possible angle, those points multiply into the billions. Slowly, like a ghost materializing from mist, the entire chamber takes shape. Every single surface that the laser can touch is mapped with relentless accuracy. This is where LiDAR's true advantage shines. Unlike a camera which needs light, the laser creates its own illumination. It can work in total darkness, which is ideal for the deep, unlit recesses of a tomb. It also has a remarkable ability to cut through dust and haze, the faint clouds of particulate matter that hang in the air of these ancient spaces, which would blur a photographic image, are virtually invisible to the laser pulses. They pass right through to strike the solid surfaces beneath, capturing the architecture with stunning clarity. This capability reveals details that are completely invisible to the human eye, even under the brightest lights. For conservators, this is perhaps the most vital application. A painted ceiling might look intact from the floor below, showing a magnificent tapestry of stars and gods. But the LiDAR scan can detect microscopic sagging, fissures so fine they are like hairline cracks in an eggshell, and areas of erosion that haven't yet broken through the surface. It provides an early warning system on a monumental scale. Teams can analyze the digital model and identify structural weaknesses long before they become a catastrophic collapse. They can monitor these cracks over successive scanning sessions, measuring changes of less than a millimeter to understand the dynamics of the tomb's movement. This isn't just about preserving art, it's about preventing a total structural failure. Some of the most breathtaking results come from scanning the long, descending corridors that lead to the burial chambers. To the naked eye, these passages might appear straight and true, engineered with the precision we associate with the ancient Egyptians, but the LiDAR data often tells a different story. It reveals the subtle corrections the builders had to make, slight deviations in the angle as they carved through unexpected veins of harder rock or avoided natural fissures in the bedrock. The scans create a perfect record of the construction process itself, frozen in stone and now captured in light. This data is so precise that researchers can create cross-sections of the tomb at any point, slicing through the digital model to see the exact thickness of walls or the angle of a doorway. It transforms an overwhelming physical space into a dataset that can be analyzed with the cool, objective eye of an engineer, providing insights that were simply impossible to obtain just a generation ago. This foundational map, built from laser light, becomes the immutable canvas upon which all the color, history, and hidden secrets of the tomb will be painted. While LiDAR provides the precise skeletal framework of a tomb, it is the second pillar of this digital rescue mission that breathes vibrant, photorealistic life into those bones. This is the realm of photogrammetry, a process that feels almost like digital alchemy. Where LiDAR maps with lasers, photogrammetry paints with pixels, using the sheer power of photography to capture the soul of a surface. The fundamental principle is surprisingly accessible, yet the execution requires immense precision. Imagine a team meticulously taking not dozens, not hundreds, but thousands of high-resolution photographs of a single burial chamber. They capture every square inch from every conceivable angle, ensuring that each photograph overlaps significantly with the ones around it. This overlap is the secret ingredient. It's as if you are trying to understand the shape of a sculpture by looking at it through 1,000 different pairs of eyes, each one seeing a slightly different perspective. Powerful computer software then takes over, performing a task that would be impossible for the human brain. It scans each of these thousands of images, identifying unique features: a tiny chip in the stone, a particular cluster of hieroglyphs, a shadow in a crack. The software then locates that same unique feature across multiple overlapping photographs. By triangulating the position of that feature from these different viewpoints, the program can calculate its exact location in three-dimensional space. It does this for millions of features across the entire image set, effectively building a dense three-dimensional point cloud similar to LiDAR's, but this one is generated purely from visual data. This point cloud is then converted into a mesh, a digital skin of interconnected triangles that forms the surface of the model. But the true magic of photogrammetry, and what sets it apart, is the texture. Since every point in the 3D model is derived directly from a photograph, the software can seamlessly drape those original photographic pixels onto the mesh. The result is not an artist's interpretation or a colored-in rendering. It is a true-to-life photographic wrap. The fidelity is absolutely breathtaking. Researchers can zoom into a section of wall on their computer screens to a degree that would be impossible in the physical tomb, even with a magnifying glass. They can see the individual brushstrokes left by an artisan over 3,000 years ago, the confident sweep of a line defining a god's arm, the delicate stippling used to create the texture of an animal's fur, even the occasional fingerprint of the painter preserved in the plaster. This level of detail allows Egyptologists to study artistic techniques, identify the hands of different master painters working in the same tomb, and understand the sequence in which a wall was decorated. This technology also solves one of the great challenges of tomb documentation: lighting. In a dark, enclosed space, shadows can hide crucial details. But photogrammetry teams use a technique called reflectance transformation imaging, or RTI. They take a series of photographs of the same exact spot, but with a light source moved to a different position for each shot. The software then combines these images, allowing a researcher to digitally relight the surface from any angle on their screen. They can drag a virtual light source across a hieroglyphic inscription, using raking light to highlight subtle reliefs and tool marks that are completely invisible under flat, even lighting. This has led to the rediscovery of faint carvings and corrected translations of texts that were misread for centuries because key details were lost in shadow. Photogrammetry doesn't just preserve what we can see, it reveals what has been hidden in plain sight, giving us a truer, more complete vision of the ancient artist's intent than has ever been possible before. But the technological revelation does not stop with capturing the shape and the surface we can see. The third and perhaps most revolutionary layer of this digital preservation effort operates in a realm completely invisible to us. This is the domain of multispectral and hyperspectral imaging, technologies that allow us to peer through the veil of time by seeing light itself in an entirely new way. Think of your own vision as a relatively simple instrument. Our eyes are tuned to perceive only three primary colors: red, green, and blue. Every color we experience is a combination of these three bands of light. Multispectral and hyperspectral cameras, however, are like superhuman eyes. They can perceive dozens, even hundreds, of individual bands of light, extending far beyond our visible spectrum into the infrared and the ultraviolet. This incredible sensitivity turns the walls of an ancient tomb into a layered historical document, where each layer tells a different part of the story. The practical application of this is nothing short of magical. A section of wall might appear to a conservator as a blank, weathered limestone surface, all traces of paint long since faded away. But when photographed with an infrared-sensitive camera, faint, ghostly images can suddenly emerge. This happens because the ancient materials interact with light in unique ways. For instance, the carbon-based black ink used for many hieroglyphs absorbs infrared light strongly. making it appear strikingly dark against the lighter, reflective limestone, even when it is completely invisible to the naked eye. This technique has been used to resurrect entire passages of text, bringing back to life prayers, names, and historical accounts that were thought to be lost forever. It's like applying a universal solvent to time, dissolving centuries of decay to reveal the original writing beneath. Even more revealing is the ability to see what lies beneath the surface of a finished painting. Ancient Egyptian artists often began their work with preliminary sketches, known as underdrawings. They would use a red ochre pigment to outline the figures and scenes directly on the plaster before applying the final colors. Over the millennia, the final painting might fade or be damaged, but these preliminary sketches often remain intact underneath. Hyperspectral imaging, with its fine-tuned ability to detect specific chemical signatures, can isolate the reflectance pattern of that red ochre sketch. By doing so, it can effectively peel back the top layer of paint, allowing Egyptologists to see the artist's first thoughts. This reveals corrections, changes in composition, and even different artistic hands at work. We can witness the creative process, seeing where an arm was repositioned or a god's profile was refined, giving us an intimate connection to the individual craftsmen who worked by torchlight thousands of years ago. The power of this analysis extends to the pigments themselves. The ancient Egyptians used a fascinating palette of materials: greens from malachite, blues from costly lapis lazuli or manufactured frit, whites from gypsum. Each of these substances has a unique spectral fingerprint, a specific way it reflects light across hundreds of wavelengths. A hyperspectral camera doesn't just see a patch of blue, it identifies the exact chemical composition of that blue. This has profound implications for both art history and conservation. Scholars can now map the use of specific, expensive pigments across a tomb, understanding the economic choices made by different pharaohs. They can also identify areas where ancient restorations occurred, or where modern, misguided attempts at repair used incorrect materials. Furthermore, by understanding the precise chemical makeup, conservators can develop targeted treatments that stabilize the original pigments without causing further harm, ensuring that these rediscovered colors do not fade away again. This isn't just about seeing more, it's about understanding more, transforming a beautiful image into a rich database of scientific and historical information that will inform research for generations to come. These remarkable technologies did not emerge overnight, fully formed to take on such a monumental task. Their use in Egyptology was pioneered by visionary projects that first demonstrated the staggering potential of digital preservation, proving that such an ambitious goal was not just a fantasy. Before the current global initiative could even be imagined, a few dedicated teams had to venture into the tombs with bulky, early-generation equipment to answer a fundamental question: could we capture the essence of these sites with enough fidelity to make a digital copy truly meaningful? One of the most influential and enduring of these pioneering efforts is the Theban mapping project. Beginning in the late 1970s under the direction of archaeologist Kent Weeks, this project set out to achieve a seemingly simple yet Herculean task: to create a comprehensive archaeological map of the entire Theban necropolis, the vast area on the west bank of the Nile at Luxor that includes the Valley of the Kings and the Valley of the Queens. In an era before laser scanners and high-resolution digital cameras, this work was painstakingly manual. Teams used traditional surveying tools, theodolites, measuring tapes, and pencils to record every passageway, chamber, and crack. What made the project revolutionary was its scope and its commitment to a new kind of open-access scholarship. It wasn't just about mapping the famous royal tombs. It was about documenting every single archaeological feature, from the grandest temple to the most modest workman's hut, creating a unified geographical database for the entire area. The project's crowning achievement, and a moment that reshaped modern Egyptology, came with the rediscovery and mapping of Tomb KV5. Long thought to be a small, insignificant burial site, The Theban mapping project's meticulous work revealed it to be the largest tomb ever found in Egypt, a colossal complex with over 120 chambers intended for the many sons of the pharaoh Ramesses II. This discovery, made possible by systematic and exhaustive surveying, was a powerful testament to the fact that even the most famous archaeological landscapes still held profound secrets. The project's publicly available atlas became an indispensable resource for researchers worldwide, proving that a centralized, meticulously detailed digital record was not just useful but essential for future discovery and preservation. It laid the philosophical and practical groundwork for everything that was to follow, demonstrating that understanding a site in its full context was the first and most critical step toward saving it. Around the same time, another monumental effort was taking shape further north on the Giza Plateau. The Giza Plateau Mapping Project, led by archaeologists like Mark Lehner, embarked on an equally ambitious mission to understand not just the pyramids themselves, but the entire lost city that built them. For centuries, the spotlight had been fixed almost exclusively on the monumental tombs of the pharaohs. Lehner's project shifted the focus to the people, using surveying and emerging digital tools to map the barracks, bakeries, and workshops of the workers who actually constructed these wonders. This was a radical change in perspective, and digital mapping was the key that unlocked it. By meticulously plotting the positions of thousands of artifacts, walls, and graves, the project began to reconstruct the social and economic organization of a society that flourished over 4,500 years ago. The Giza project was also a testing ground for early 3D technologies. As laser scanning became more feasible, the team used it to create precise models of the Sphinx and the Great Pyramids, capturing their current state in unprecedented detail. This data provided a permanent baseline against which all future erosion or damage could be measured. But perhaps its most significant contribution was the creation of the Giza Archives, an online repository that aimed to gather all the historical documentation related to the plateau, from excavation photographs taken in the early 1900s to modern survey data, into a single, searchable database. This holistic approach showed that digitization was about more than just geometry. It was about weaving together all strands of evidence, maps, photos, diaries, and artifacts into a cohesive digital tapestry. These early pioneers, working with the limited tools of their time, proved that a digital twin could be richer and more informative than a simple physical visit, offering context and connections that are impossible to grasp when standing alone in the shadow of a pyramid. Their success gave the archaeological community the confidence and the blueprint to scale up into the global rescue mission we see today. Building on the legacy of those pioneering mapping projects, the true power of modern digital archaeology is perhaps best illustrated by a current, high-stakes mission in one of Egypt's most enigmatic locations, the ancient city of Amarna. This site, the short-lived capital of the so-called heretic pharaoh Akhenaten, presents a unique and urgent preservation challenge. Unlike the grand, deep-cut tombs in the Valley of the Kings designed for eternity, the royal tombs at Amarna were rushed. Akhenaten built his new capital dedicated to the sun god Aten in a feverish hurry, and the tombs for his family and courtiers were carved into the cliffs on the city's eastern edge with a startling haste that is now their greatest vulnerability. The rock here is of poorer quality, more prone to fracturing, and the tomb's locations expose them to extreme temperature fluctuations and wind erosion. The very act of creating a new religious capital in the desert has left these sites in a uniquely precarious state, making them a perfect test case for the full arsenal of digital preservation tools. The Amarna Royal Tombs Project, led by archaeologists in collaboration with the Egyptian Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, has made these tombs a central focus. Their work goes far beyond simple documentation. It is a race against a very visible decay. Inside the most important tomb, that of Akhenaten himself, the damage is multifaceted. Large sections of the walls, meant to be covered in the distinctive flowing art style of the Amarna period, were never even finished. In other areas, the plaster has detached from the rock face and lies in shattered fragments on the floor. But the most significant threat comes from the ceiling. It is marred by deep structural cracks, a result of the inferior limestone and the immense pressure from the cliff above. The fear is not just the loss of art, but a potential total collapse of entire chambers. Traditional restoration would be invasive, risky, and potentially destructive. Instead, the team is using 3D laser scanning to create a permanent, precise record of the tomb's current, fragile geometry, monitoring millimeter-level shifts in these cracks season after season to understand the dynamics of the decay. Here, the digital process is not passive. It is actively driving new interpretations of this controversial period in Egyptian history. The tomb's decoration is starkly different from traditional royal tombs. The most famous scene carved on the walls of the royal tomb depicts Akhenaten, his wife Nefertiti, and their daughters worshipping the sun disk, the Aten. This intimate, naturalistic family portrait was a radical departure from the formal, god-like depictions of pharaohs found elsewhere. Using photogrammetry, researchers have created a textured model of this scene with such high resolution that they can study the individual chisel marks. This has revealed that the work was done by multiple teams of artisans, some working with incredible skill to capture the fluid, almost exaggerated features of the royal family, while others worked more crudely, likely a testament to the rushed nature of the entire Amarna enterprise. The digital model allows Egyptologists to virtually walk around these tool marks, understanding the pressure and angle of each strike, which in turn offers clues about the training and organization of the workforce Akhenaten was able to assemble in his remote capital. Perhaps the most exciting application involves the tombs of the nobles. These smaller, often more damaged tombs are scattered across the Amarna plain. Their walls are covered in scenes of daily life that are invaluable because they show the city as it was actually lived in, rather than the idealized royal propaganda. However, many of these paintings are now so faded they are virtually invisible. This is where hyperspectral imaging has become a revolutionary tool. By scanning the walls with cameras that see into the infrared spectrum, the project has managed to bring forth stunning details. Faded processions of soldiers, images of the royal palace, and hieroglyphic text have been resurrected from the blank stone. In one noble's tomb, a scene thought to depict a simple offering ceremony was revealed under infrared light to show a previously unknown depiction of Akhenaten and Nefertiti riding in a chariot through the city, providing a rare glimpse of the royals engaging directly with the populace. Each of these digital rediscoveries adds another piece to the puzzle of Amarna, helping to move the narrative away from the pharaoh as a solitary heretic and toward a more nuanced understanding of the society he briefly created. The work at Amarna demonstrates that digital preservation is not an end in itself, but a gateway to a new kind of timeless scholarship. The data collected is being used to create virtual reality experiences that allow scholars and the public to explore the tombs without causing further harm. More importantly, it creates a permanent, immutable record. If a section of wall in the royal tomb were to collapse tomorrow, its exact dimensions, the texture of its surface, and even the chemical signature of its pigments would be preserved forever in the digital archive. This project stands as a powerful testament to how technology is allowing us to not just save these fragile sites from oblivion, but to interrogate them with a fresh perspective, asking questions of the stone that we never knew we could ask, and ensuring that the mysteries of Akhenaten's revolutionary city will continue to be unlocked for centuries to come. This meticulous work at a single site like Amarna reveals both the incredible potential and the sobering reality of the overall mission, because the true scale of the challenge is almost beyond comprehension. When we speak of digitizing all of Egypt's tombs, we are not talking about a few dozen famous royal burial sites. We are confronting a number so vast it threatens to overwhelm the imagination. Current archaeological estimates suggest there are not thousands but hundreds of thousands, and likely well over 1 million, tombs scattered across the Egyptian landscape. This figure encompasses the entire spectrum of burial practices across 3,000 years of pharaonic history, from the monumental pyramids of Giza to the deep, labyrinthine complexes in the Valley of the Kings, and down to the countless simple mastabas and shaft tombs of everyday citizens. Every level of society, from the god-king pharaoh to the humble farmer, sought an afterlife, and each left behind a grave that tells a part of the Egyptian story. Preserving this entire narrative is a task of unprecedented magnitude. To put this in perspective, consider the geography involved. The archaeological riches of Egypt are not concentrated in one single valley. They are spread along the entire length of the Nile River, from the delta in the north to the Nubian borders in the south, and then fanning out deep into the desert oases. Each major ancient city, Memphis, Thebes, Amarna, Abydos, was surrounded by its own vast necropolis, a city of the dead that could stretch for miles. Furthermore, remote areas like the western deserts Dakka and Kaga oases contain extensive cemeteries from different eras. Many of these sites are in extremely remote and inhospitable terrain, accessible only by days of travel on rough desert tracks. The logistical hurdle of simply getting teams and their sensitive equipment to these locations is a monumental effort in itself, requiring extensive planning, permits, and local cooperation. This isn't a project that can be completed by a single university or even a single country. It demands a level of international collaboration rarely seen in the humanities. The diversity of these tombs adds another layer of complexity to the digitization process. A one-size-fits-all approach is impossible. The technology used to scan the vast, smooth walls of a pyramid's interior chamber is different from what's needed to map the cramped, intricately painted corridors of a noble's tomb, which is different again from documenting a simple, rock-cut shaft tomb that might be only a few meters deep. Some tombs are easily accessible, while others are partially collapsed or flooded. Some are celebrated World Heritage Sites with established infrastructure, while others are unexcavated mounds known only from satellite imagery. Each type of tomb presents unique challenges for the preservation teams, requiring them to constantly adapt their methods, from using large ground-based laser scanners for grand spaces to deploying small drones or even handheld scanners for confined and unstable areas. This variability means the process can never be fully automated. It requires expert human judgment at every single site. This staggering scope transforms the mission from a straightforward documentation project into a true race against time on a planetary scale. The resources required are immense. We are talking about the need for hundreds of specialized scanners, thousands of high-resolution cameras, and petabytes of digital storage to hold the unimaginable volume of data generated. But the most critical resource is human expertise. This work cannot be done by robots alone. It requires trained archaeologists, epigraphers, conservators, and technologists who can not only operate the equipment but also interpret what they are seeing, making crucial decisions in the moment about what to capture and how. Training enough people to carry out this work to the required standard is a challenge in itself. This is why the project has become a global endeavor, involving partnerships between the Egyptian Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, major institutions like the Getty Conservation Institute, and universities from around the world. It is a modern-day equivalent of building the great libraries of antiquity, a collective effort to gather all of this vulnerable knowledge into a single, secure, digital ark before the sands of time claim another irreplaceable piece of our shared history. And so, while teams are racing against physical decay in the desert, an equally monumental challenge is emerging in the digital realm. The sheer volume of information generated by these high-fidelity scans is almost beyond human comprehension. Consider this: a single, detailed scan of a modestly sized tomb, using a combination of LiDAR and high-resolution photogrammetry, can easily generate several terabytes of data. Now multiply that by the hundreds of tombs already documented, and then again by the hundreds of thousands that remain. We are not talking about gigabytes or even terabytes anymore. We have entered the age of the petabyte, where a single petabyte represents 1,000 terabytes or 1 million gigabytes. To put that in tangible terms, a single petabyte could store over 13 years of high-definition video. The project to digitize Egypt's heritage is generating thousands of petabytes, creating a data deluge that requires a storage solution as ambitious as the scanning process itself. This immense volume of data necessitates infrastructure on a staggering scale. We are no longer dealing with a collection of hard drives on a shelf. The digital Egypt is being built within massive, geographically dispersed server farms. These are not ordinary data centers. They are the modern equivalent of the Great Library of Alexandria, designed for permanence and universal access. The primary archive is hosted in a collaborative effort between Egypt's own servers and trusted international partners, creating multiple redundant copies stored in different parts of the world. This ensures that a natural disaster, political instability, or a simple power failure in one location cannot wipe out a piece of digital history. The data is stored on specialized archival-grade systems designed for long-term integrity, with automated systems that regularly check the files for any sign of data rot or corruption, seamlessly repairing or migrating the information to new formats as technology evolves. This is a perpetual, silent vigil, a commitment to maintaining the digital tomb's integrity for centuries, not just years. But storing the data is only half the battle, ensuring its authenticity is the other. How can a researcher in the year 2100 be certain that the digital model of Tutankhamun's tomb they are studying is an unaltered, pristine copy of the original scan from our time? This is where cutting-edge verification systems, often using blockchain-like technology, come into play. When a scanning project is completed, a unique digital fingerprint known as a cryptographic hash is generated for the entire dataset. This hash is like a secure, unforgeable seal. If even a single byte of data within those millions of files is altered, whether by accident, degradation, or malicious intent, the hash will change completely, immediately signaling that the file's integrity has been compromised. These hashes are then embedded into public, decentralized ledgers, creating a permanent and verifiable chain of custody that stretches from the moment of capture into the indefinite future. It's a way of building trust into the very fabric of the digital archive, guaranteeing to future generations that what they are seeing is a true and accurate representation of the tomb as it existed in our era. The management of this digital library is itself a new scientific discipline. Specialized software platforms allow researchers to navigate this ocean of information without drowning in it. They can call up a 3D model of a specific tomb, query the database for all instances of a particular hieroglyph, or compare the spectral signature of a blue pigment across different dynasties. This transforms the archive from a static repository into a dynamic tool for discovery. The goal is to create a system so intuitive and powerful that it becomes the primary method of research, allowing a scholar in Tokyo to take detailed measurements of a sarcophagus in Luxor without ever booking a flight, preserving the physical object from the wear and tear of constant, hands-on study. This is the ultimate promise of the digital ark, not just to save the tombs from destruction, but to democratize access to them, unlocking their secrets for a global community of thinkers and ensuring that the story of ancient Egypt continues to be written, not from its fragments, but from its complete and perfectly preserved digital twin. All of that extraordinary data, the billions of points and pixels collected in the desert heat, finds its ultimate purpose when it becomes a portal to the past. This is where the digital ark transforms into a true time machine, moving beyond the realm of academic study and into the hands of the public through the magic of virtual and augmented reality. Imagine slipping on a headset and in an instant finding yourself standing at the entrance of a tomb that has been closed to visitors for decades. The oppressive desert heat is gone, replaced by the cool, still air of a sacred space. You are no longer a passive viewer of a documentary. You are an active explorer, free to move through the burial chamber at your own pace, to look up at the ceiling depicting the starry sky of the ancient Egyptian night, or to crouch down and examine a hieroglyphic inscription at eye level. This is the power of immersive VR, and it is revolutionizing not just preservation, but education and public access on a global scale. These virtual experiences are crafted with painstaking care from the very same 3D models used by conservators. The process begins with optimizing the massive, raw datasets for real-time rendering. The photorealistic textures captured through photogrammetry are applied to the geometric framework built by LiDAR, creating an environment that is not a cartoonish approximation but a scientifically accurate replica. Advanced game engines are then used to program the experience, allowing for smooth navigation and interaction. The results are breathtakingly authentic. In a virtual tour of Queen Nefertari's tomb, often called the Sistine Chapel of ancient Egypt, you can appreciate the sublime beauty of the paintings without the protective glass barriers that obscure the view for physical visitors. You can lean in so close that you can see the subtle cracks in the plaster and the masterful blending of colors, an intimacy that is strictly forbidden in the real tomb to prevent further damage. Perhaps the most emotionally powerful application of this technology is digital restoration. Using the data from hyperspectral imaging that reveals original pigments and consulting with Egyptologists on artistic conventions, technicians can create a restored mode within the VR experience. With a click of a button, the walls around you can be magically repainted. The faded ochre yellows and muted blues burst back into their original, vibrant brilliance. Scenes that are now fragmentary ghosts reappear in their full narrative glory, showing the pharaoh's triumphant journey to the afterlife as it was intended to be seen 3,000 years ago. This isn't guesswork, it is an evidence-based reconstruction that allows us to experience the tomb with the same awe and wonder that the high priests and family members would have felt during the burial ceremony. It is the closest we will ever come to traveling back in time. For those without access to high-end VR equipment, augmented reality offers another compelling window into the past. Through a smartphone or tablet, you can project a 3D model of a priceless artifact, like the golden mask of Tutankhamun, directly onto your coffee table. You can walk around it, zoom in to study the intricate inlay of lapis lazuli and carnelian, and even trigger informational pop-ups that explain the symbolism of every element. Museums around the world are already adopting this technology, allowing visitors to point their devices at a sarcophagus and see an animated overlay showing the mummification process or a reconstruction of the person's face in life. This interactive layer transforms static observation into an engaging, multi-sensory learning experience, making the ancient world feel immediate and tangible. The implications for education are profound. A school child in a classroom in Brazil can now take a guided VR field trip through the Great Pyramid, following the same path the pharaoh's body took during burial. University students of archaeology can practice their epigraphy skills by virtually tracing hieroglyphs on a temple wall without the cost and environmental impact of travel to Egypt. This democratization of access is a core tenet of the entire digitization project. It ensures that these wonders, which belong to all of humanity, are not reserved only for those who can afford a pilgrimage to Luxor. They become a universal resource, fostering a deeper global appreciation for cultural heritage and inspiring the next generation of Egyptologists who may first discover their passion not in a desert but through a headset in their own home. This digital resurrection ensures that the legacy of the pharaohs will continue to educate and enchant for centuries to come, long after the original stones have whispered their last secrets to the wind. This shift from physical preservation to digital creation is fundamentally rewriting the rules of Egyptology itself. For centuries, the field relied on the meticulous work of artists and epigraphers who would spend weeks in a single tomb, crouched on scaffolding, carefully copying hieroglyphs by hand onto large sheets of paper. While these facsimiles were works of art in their own right, they were inherently interpretive. The artist's hand, the angle of the light, and even their own understanding of the scene could subtly influence the final copy. Today, the digital model eliminates that layer of interpretation. It provides a pristine, objective, and permanent record that is now the ultimate source material for scholarship. This allows for a new kind of scientific rigor where any Egyptologist anywhere in the world can examine the exact same unforgeable dataset. One of the most powerful applications is in the realm of epigraphy, the study of inscriptions. In the past, if a scholar wanted to study the specific carving style of a particular royal craftsman, they would have to travel to the tomb, secure special permission, and then try to make detailed observations under challenging conditions. Now they can call up the laser-scanned model on their computer. The precision of the data allows them to perform what's known as a stone autopsy. They can digitally highlight the tool marks, measuring the depth and angle of each chisel strike with micrometer accuracy. This can reveal the handedness of the artisan, whether they were right or left-handed, the specific types of tools they used, and even the sequence in which different parts of a scene were carved. These minute details act like a fingerprint, allowing researchers to trace the work of a single, named master sculptor across different tombs and reigns, building a biography of an individual artist who lived 3,500 years ago. Beyond individual marks, the digital models are revealing grand architectural secrets that were simply impossible to perceive from within the confines of the tomb. Researchers can take the entire 3D point cloud of a massive complex like the tomb of Ramesses II and run complex algorithms to analyze its axial alignment. This has revealed that many tombs are not simply oriented toward the west, the traditional realm of the dead, but are precisely aligned with specific celestial events, such as the setting of the star Sirius or the winter solstice sunset on the date of the pharaoh's accession to the throne. The ability to stand virtually outside the tomb and see its placement within the entire landscape, and then link that placement to astronomical data, is providing profound new insights into the religious and cosmological beliefs that guided the tomb's construction. It transforms the tomb from a static burial place into a dynamic cosmological machine, designed to facilitate the pharaoh's journey among the stars. Perhaps the most exciting discoveries are those that emerge from comparing multiple digital models. Scholars can now overlay the 3D scan of a wall from a tomb in the Valley of the Kings with a scan of a similar scene from a temple hundreds of miles away. By comparing the precise proportions of figures, the spacing of hieroglyphs, and the curvature of lines, they can identify a canonical royal style that was enforced across the empire, a visual branding of pharaonic power. In one remarkable case, digital analysis of the famous reliefs in the Temple of Abu Simbel revealed that the colossal figures of Ramesses II were carved using a precise geometric grid system, a master blueprint that ensured his image would be rendered perfectly regardless of which team of sculptors was working on which part of the monument. This discovery was made not by looking at the stones themselves, but by analyzing the mathematical relationships within the digital model, a task no human eye could ever perform with such accuracy. This virtual archaeology also allows for non-destructive experimentation. A long-standing debate concerned the acoustic properties of the so-called relieving chambers above the main burial chamber in the Great Pyramid. Some theorists suggested these narrow, confined spaces were designed to create specific resonant frequencies during rituals. Instead of trying to conduct disruptive sound tests in the fragile structure, researchers used the laser scan data to create a perfect acoustic simulation. They were able to play virtual sounds through the digital model and analyze the results, concluding that while the chambers did have interesting acoustic properties, there was no evidence they were deliberately engineered as a giant musical instrument. This ability to test bold hypotheses without any risk to the original monument is opening up entirely new frontiers of research, allowing Egyptology to become as much a laboratory science as a field-based discipline. The digital twin is not just a copy, it is a sandbox for discovery, ensuring that the quest to understand ancient Egypt is limited only by our questions, not by the fragility of the treasures themselves. Yet as this extraordinary digital library grows, it forces us to confront a deeply modern dilemma: who, in fact, holds the keys to this virtual kingdom? The creation of a perfect digital twin of a 5,000-year-old tomb does not automatically resolve the complex questions of ownership, control, and access that come with it. This is no longer just about preserving stone and pigment. It is about navigating a labyrinth of ethics, politics, and cultural sovereignty that is every bit as intricate as the tombs themselves. The scanners may capture objective data, but the resulting files become part of a high-stakes debate over who has the right to control, profit from, and interpret humanity's shared heritage. At the heart of this debate is a fundamental question of stewardship. The Egyptian government, through the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, holds the legal and moral authority over all physical archaeological sites within its borders. It is their position that the digital data, being a direct derivative of the physical monuments, is also a sovereign national resource. This perspective is rooted in a long and often painful history of colonial-era exploitation, where priceless artifacts were routinely excavated and shipped off to museums in Europe and North America, a practice known as colonial archaeology. For Egypt, controlling the digital scans is a way of reclaiming agency over its own cultural narrative, ensuring that the profits and privileges derived from these treasures primarily benefit the Egyptian people, and that the interpretation of their own history is not outsourced to foreign institutions. This has led to strict regulations governing how data is collected, stored, and shared, with all projects requiring formal permits and the resulting data often remaining the property of the Egyptian state. However, this stance creates a natural tension with the international academic community and the principles of open science. The digitization projects are almost always collaborative efforts funded by foreign universities, research grants from foreign governments, or even private technology companies. These partners invest millions of dollars in equipment, salaries, and technical expertise. They rightly argue that without their contribution, the digital record would not exist at all. Many researchers advocate for a model of open access, where the raw data is made freely available to scholars and the public worldwide, believing that knowledge about our collective human past should not be locked behind paywalls or national borders. They point to projects like the Giza archives as a success story, where open data has fueled a renaissance in Egyptological research, allowing experts from every corner of the globe to make new discoveries from their own desks. Complicating the landscape further is the growing involvement of for-profit technology corporations. A company might provide state-of-the-art scanning equipment and software for free, or at a reduced cost, in exchange for the rights to use the data to create commercial products like lucrative virtual reality experiences, educational software, or assets for the entertainment industry. While this partnership can accelerate the pace of digitization, it raises serious concerns about the commodification of culture. Should a private entity be able to profit from the digital replica of a pharaoh's tomb? If so, what obligations does that company have to reinvest those profits into conservation efforts or the local communities living near these archaeological sites? The specter of a future where the best virtual tours are locked behind expensive subscription services, creating a two-tiered system of access to cultural heritage, is a real and troubling possibility for many ethicists. This leads to the crucial issue of equitable access. The noble goal of the digital ark is to preserve Egypt's heritage for all of humanity, but the practicalities can create new forms of exclusion. A researcher at a well-funded American university may have the computing power and bandwidth to download and manipulate multi-terabyte datasets, but what about an archaeology student at a university in Cairo or Khartoum? If the primary digital archives are hosted on servers in Europe or the United States, researchers in the Global South can face significant barriers due to slower internet speeds and limited resources. True equity requires not just making the data available, but actively working to build the infrastructure and capacity in the countries of origin, ensuring that the scholars who are the cultural descendants of the ancient Egyptians are not left behind in the digital race. Ultimately, there is no simple answer to the question of ownership. The most promising path forward appears to lie in developing new, nuanced models of shared stewardship. This could involve licensing agreements that give the Egyptian government full ownership and control, while granting international research institutions specific rights for academic, non-commercial use. Any commercial licensing deals could include clauses that mandate a significant percentage of revenue be directed back into a national conservation fund. Furthermore, a commitment to building mirrored data archives within Egypt itself is essential for ensuring long-term access and technological sovereignty. The goal is to move beyond a binary debate of open versus closed and toward a collaborative framework that respects national rights, honors the contributions of international partners, and above all, upholds the principle that the story of ancient Egypt is a story that belongs in some way to everyone. The success of the entire digitization project may well depend on our ability to build a digital ethics as robust and forward-thinking as the technology we are using to save the past. While the monumental task of scanning and archiving is led by professional teams, the sheer volume of data has opened the door for an unprecedented development. The global public is now being invited to become active participants in this great rescue mission. This is the world of citizen science, where everyday people are using their home computers to help archaeologists accomplish work that would otherwise take centuries. The challenge is no longer just about capturing the data. It's about processing it, deciphering it, and making sense of the billions of fragments of information. By crowdsourcing the past, researchers are tapping into a vast, distributed network of human intelligence, turning what was once a solitary academic pursuit into a collaborative project for all of humanity. One of the most successful examples of this is a platform like Zooniverse, which hosts projects like micropasts. Here, volunteers from around the world are presented with photogrammetric 3D models of ancient artifacts, often fragments of pottery or bronze tools. Their task is a simple but crucial one: to trace the outline of the object with their computer's mouse. While this seems elementary, the collective effort of thousands of volunteers doing this tracing creates a massive dataset of precise contours. This data is then used to train artificial intelligence algorithms to recognize and classify these objects automatically. In essence, the volunteers are teaching the computers how to see like archaeologists, accelerating the process of cataloging finds from excavations by orders of magnitude. A single person might trace a dozen objects in an evening, but 10,000 people can process an entire museum's collection in a matter of months. For those with a passion for language and history, another captivating opportunity lies in the transcription of ancient texts. The Egyptologist's equivalent of a treasure map is often a papyrus fragment, but these documents are frequently fragile, faded, or written in a difficult cursive script known as hieratic. Projects like the Ancient Lives project have placed hundreds of thousands of images of papyri fragments from the Oxyrhynchus collection online. Volunteers with no prior experience necessary are shown a fragment and a corresponding alphabet chart. Their job is to match the squiggles and lines on the papyrus to the known hieratic symbols. Each fragment is reviewed by multiple volunteers, and the consensus transcription is what scholars use. This method has led to the rediscovery of lost poems by Sappho, fragments of unknown gospels, and mundane details of everyday life in Roman Egypt, all deciphered by retired teachers, students, and history enthusiasts in their spare time. Perhaps the most visually engaging form of crowdsourcing involves the digital reconstruction of shattered artifacts. In the real world, conservators might spend weeks trying to physically glue together a large pottery jar from hundreds of broken pieces. Digitally, this puzzle can be solved by a global team. Platforms allow volunteers to manipulate 3D scans of pottery fragments, rotating them in space and trying to match their edges with other fragments from the same archaeological site. The computer can assist by suggesting potential matches based on curvature and color, but the human eye for pattern recognition is still far superior. A volunteer in Japan might successfully join two pieces that a researcher in Cairo had overlooked, simply by looking at the problem from a different angle. This collaborative jigsaw puzzle has reassembled everything from elegant drinking cups to massive storage amphorae, restoring vessels that haven't been whole for 2,000 years. The impact of this global workforce is profound. It dramatically accelerates research, allowing small academic teams to manage datasets that would otherwise be overwhelming. But beyond mere speed, it introduces a beautiful diversity of perspective. A graphic designer might notice a visual pattern in a wall painting that an archaeologist focused on text might miss. An engineer might recognize a structural detail in a tomb's architecture. This collective intelligence is helping to solve mysteries that have stumped experts for decades. Furthermore, it forges a powerful personal connection. When a volunteer spends an hour tracing a scarab beetle on a piece of pottery, they are no longer a passive observer of history. They have become a part of its preservation. They develop a vested interest in that object, that site, and that culture, creating a global community of guardians for our shared heritage. This decentralized, collaborative model may well be the key to not just saving the physical past, but ensuring its story remains alive and relevant for generations to come. This fundamental shift in the field, from physical excavation to digital preservation, is creating a parallel evolution within the halls of academia. Universities around the world are recognizing that the archaeologist of the future cannot rely solely on the traditional toolkit of a trowel and a brush. They must also be a data scientist, a 3D modeler, and a digital storyteller. This has led to the birth of entirely new academic disciplines, with specialized degree programs and field schools designed to train a new generation of custodians for our digital heritage. These students are learning to see the past not just through the soil they sieve, but through the point clouds and spectral data they capture. The curriculum for a modern archaeology student looks vastly different than it did even a decade ago. Alongside required courses in stratigraphy and ceramic typology, you will now find mandatory modules in photogrammetry, geographic information systems or GIS, and data management. Learning to operate a terrestrial laser scanner is becoming as essential as learning to properly draw a soil profile. Universities are investing in cutting-edge technology labs filled with high-resolution scanners, drones for aerial survey, and powerful computing clusters capable of processing the immense datasets generated in the field. The goal is to produce graduates who are bilingual, fluent in both the language of traditional archaeological theory and the language of digital practice. They need to understand why a potsherd is significant and also how to create an interactive 3D model of it that can be shared with the world. This training is put to the ultimate test in dedicated digital archaeology field schools. Imagine a summer program not in a dusty trench, but in a mock archaeological site set up on university grounds, or better yet, a partnership with a real heritage site that allows for hands-on, non-invasive training. Students spend their days not digging but scanning. They learn the meticulous process of setting up control points for a laser scanner, planning the perfect photographic coverage for a photogrammetry model, and flying a drone to capture the topography of a site from above. They face real-world challenges: how to scan a dark, confined space, how to deal with reflective surfaces that confuse the lasers, and how to manage battery life and data storage in remote locations. This practical, problem-solving experience is invaluable, transforming theoretical knowledge into tangible skills. The human impact of this educational shift is profound. It is breaking down barriers and democratizing the field in unexpected ways. For students with physical disabilities that might prevent them from participating in strenuous, traditional excavations, digital archaeology offers a new and vital pathway to contribute. They can lead the digitization effort, process data in the lab, and become experts in virtual reconstruction. Furthermore, this focus on digital data fosters a more collaborative and interdisciplinary approach. Archaeology students find themselves working alongside computer science majors on algorithm development, with engineering students on structural analysis of scanned monuments, and with design students on creating compelling public-facing virtual experiences. This cross-pollination of ideas is breeding innovation at an incredible pace. The ultimate objective of this educational transformation is to build a sustainable future for the discipline. The race to digitize Egypt's tombs and countless other heritage sites worldwide is a marathon, not a sprint. It will require decades of dedicated work, and that work will depend on a continuous pipeline of skilled professionals. By embedding these digital methodologies into the core of archaeological education, universities are ensuring that the mission will continue long after the current pioneers have retired. They are cultivating a global community of digitally native archaeologists who will not only continue the work of preservation, but will also invent the next generation of technologies we cannot yet even imagine. This is how we ensure that the digital ark remains a living, growing resource, constantly tended to by new hands and fresh minds committed to safeguarding the echoes of our shared human story. All of this incredible technology and global collaboration, however, hinges on a single, sobering reality: the immense cost of saving history. It is a monumental financial undertaking, one that requires a continuous and diverse stream of funding to keep the digital scanners humming and the data flowing. The price tag for preserving a civilization is not small, and understanding where the money comes from reveals a complex ecosystem of patrons as varied as the tombs themselves. The most immediate costs are for the cutting-edge hardware that makes the digital capture possible. A single high-end terrestrial laser scanner, the workhorse of these projects, can carry a price tag of well over $100,000. But a scanner is useless on its own. Teams require a full suite of equipment, high-resolution cameras capable of capturing the fine details needed for photogrammetry, drones for aerial surveys of tomb entrances and broader site topography, and specialized hyperspectral imaging systems that can cost as much as a luxury car. Then there is the supporting gear: robust tripods, powerful portable computers for initial data processing in the field, and massive portable hard drives to transport terabytes of data from remote desert sites. This is before considering the constant need for maintenance, calibration, and inevitable upgrades as technology evolves. A single well-equipped expedition to document a single tomb complex can easily require $1 million in hardware alone before a single team member even boards a plane. Beyond the equipment, the largest and most vital expense is human expertise. This is not a job for volunteers with smartphones. The work demands highly specialized professionals who command significant salaries. A typical field team includes archaeological directors, expert epigraphers who can read the inscriptions, conservators to advise on the fragile state of the walls, and skilled technologists who can operate the complex scanning equipment and troubleshoot problems on the fly. These individuals often have advanced degrees and years of field experience. Furthermore, the projects require logistical support staff, local Egyptian archaeologists, drivers, and site guards whose contributions are essential for navigating the practical realities of working in Egypt. The cost of assembling, insuring, and sustaining such a team for weeks or months in a remote, challenging environment represents the single most significant recurring expense in the entire digitization process. Once the data is captured, the financial burden shifts from the desert to the digital realm. The staggering volume of information generated, which we discussed earlier, requires immense and costly infrastructure to store and manage. Renting space on secure, redundant server farms that can hold petabytes of data involves ongoing subscription fees that can amount to tens of thousands of dollars per year for a single project. Then there is the cost of the software licenses for the sophisticated programs needed to process the raw laser scans and photographs into usable 3D models. These specialized applications are not consumer-grade products. They are industrial-strength tools with annual license fees that can run into the thousands per seat. Add to this the need for dedicated data managers and IT specialists to maintain the integrity of the archive, and it becomes clear that the digital afterlife of a tomb requires a perpetual financial commitment, an endowment for ones and zeros that must last as long as the memory of the pharaohs themselves. Given these astronomical costs, the funding for this global mission comes from a patchwork of sources, each with its own motivations and expectations. The Egyptian government, through the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, is a fundamental partner, providing essential in-kind support like access to sites, security, and the expertise of its own inspectors. However, the state's budget is stretched thin across the country's vast archaeological landscape, covering everything from routine maintenance to emergency conservation. Therefore, the bulk of the direct funding for large-scale digitization projects comes from international sources, major philanthropic organizations like the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation and the Getty Trust have been instrumental pioneers, providing multi-million-dollar grants that allow for multi-year projects. Their motivation is purely cultural preservation, a commitment to safeguarding world heritage for its own intrinsic value. Alongside these non-profits, universities play a critical role. Prestigious institutions invest heavily in these projects as a form of advanced research, funding expeditions through their archaeology and engineering departments. For a university, the payoff is not financial profit but academic prestige, groundbreaking publications, and invaluable training opportunities for their students. More recently, we have seen the entry of a powerful new player, corporate sponsorship. Technology companies, particularly those that manufacture the very scanners and cameras being used, sometimes provide equipment and funding. For them, it is a powerful form of research and development and marketing, a chance to prove their technology in the most demanding real-world conditions while associating their brand with a noble, global endeavor. This blend of public, private, and academic funding creates a fragile but essential alliance, a financial pyramid that must be constantly rebuilt to keep the race against time on track. Yet for all the power of our modern technology, there is a haunting and sobering reality we must confront. We are not starting this race from the beginning. We are already behind. The countdown did not start when the first laser scanner was switched on. It started the moment the first tomb was unsealed, and in the intervening centuries, an incalculable amount of history has already slipped through our fingers, lost to forces both natural and man-made. These silent gaps in our understanding serve as the most powerful reminder of why this digital mission is not just important but critically urgent. Consider the tragic fate of the tomb of Amenhotep III, one of the most powerful pharaohs of the 18th dynasty. His burial place in the western valley of the Valley of the Kings was once a masterpiece, its walls covered in elaborate scenes from the Amduat, the ancient Egyptian guide to the underworld. Early explorers and archaeologists in the 19th and early 20th centuries documented its splendor, but then disaster struck. A series of particularly heavy rainstorms, exacerbated by the altered water table, led to severe flooding. Torrents of water laden with mud and debris poured into the tomb, not once but repeatedly over several decades. The result was catastrophic. Vast sections of the painted plaster simply dissolved or were ripped from the walls by the force of the water. What remains today is a heartbreaking shadow of its former glory. Large areas are nothing but bare, stained limestone, the vibrant illustrations of gods and demons forever erased. We have the old, hand-drawn copies made by those early visitors, but they are artistic interpretations, lacking the precise color, scale, and texture of the originals. A digital scan of Amenhotep III's tomb today would capture a ruin, a poignant testament to what happens when preservation efforts arrive too late. Other losses are more insidious, the result of a slow, invisible decay that was not understood until it was too late. The beautiful tomb of Nefertari, the favorite wife of Ramesses II, is a prime example. When it was rediscovered in 1904, its paintings were hailed as the most exquisite in all of Egypt, but the tomb was soon plagued by salt crystallization. As tourists flocked to see it, their breath introduced moisture that caused salts within the walls to repeatedly dissolve and recrystallize, pushing the priceless paint off the plaster in tiny, irreversible flakes. By the time the grave threat was fully recognized and the tomb was closed to the public for a massive restoration project in the 1990s, significant damage had already been done. While conservators performed miracles to stabilize what remained, certain details were lost forever. The subtle shading on Nefertari's face, the finest lines of her hieroglyphic inscriptions, these nuances faded beyond recovery. We are fortunate to have saved what we did, but it stands as a permanent lesson in the delicate balance between access and preservation. Perhaps the most frustrating losses are those caused not by nature, but by direct human action. The expansion of modern towns and cities along the Nile has, on occasion, literally paved over history. There are accounts from the early days of Egyptology of farmers uncovering simple shaft tombs while plowing their fields, only to rebury them or even use them as storage pits, unknowingly destroying the context of the burials. In more extreme cases, the relentless march of urban development in the 20th century led to the complete obliteration of known archaeological sites. Cemeteries from the Greco-Roman period, which held valuable clues about the fusion of Egyptian and classical cultures, were sometimes leveled to make way for new housing or infrastructure before proper excavations could be conducted. These tombs, belonging to the everyday people who are often the key to understanding a society, are gone forever, their stories silenced beneath concrete and asphalt. They are a stark reminder that the race to digitize is also a race against the ongoing pressures of a modern, growing nation. The most profound sense of loss, however, comes from the tombs we know existed but can never study. Ancient royal records and graffiti left by priests mention tombs of pharaohs from the earliest dynasties that have never been located. It is likely that some, carved into the unstable cliffs of forgotten necropolises, collapsed in antiquity and were swallowed by the desert sands. Others may have been completely quarried away for their stone in later periods. These are the ghosts in the archaeological record, empty spaces where a king's name should be. We can only wonder what knowledge they contained, what unique versions of pyramid texts, what insights into the founding of the Egyptian state, what artistic styles that predate anything we have ever seen. Their absence is a permanent void in our historical narrative. Each tomb that is digitized today is an insurance policy against this kind of total loss, ensuring that no matter what the future brings, the story of that place is secured for all time. The silent echoes of these vanished tombs are the driving force behind every scan, every photograph, and every pixel collected in the frantic effort to save what still remains. At the forefront of this global effort stand specialized organizations that function as the modern equivalents of ancient scribes, meticulously transcribing the physical world into a permanent digital language. These are not traditional archaeological institutes, but technology-driven non-profits and for-profit companies whose very mission is to save cultural heritage through innovation. Leading this charge is CyArk, a name that stands for Cyber Archive, founded in 2003 by engineer Ben Kassira after he witnessed the deliberate destruction of the Bamiyan Buddhas in Afghanistan. CyArk's goal was audacious: to create a free, online library of the world's most significant cultural heritage sites before they are lost to time, disaster, or human conflict. CyArk operates like a digital special forces unit for preservation. They deploy small, highly trained teams to crisis points around the globe, from earthquake-damaged temples in Nepal to the fire-ravaged Notre Dame Cathedral. In Egypt, their work has been foundational. Using a combination of laser scanning, photogrammetry, and drone-based aerial mapping, they have created some of the most comprehensive digital records of sites like the Abu Simbel temples. Their process is incredibly systematic. They establish a network of control points throughout a site to ensure millimeter accuracy, then capture billions of data points from every possible angle. But perhaps their most significant contribution is their commitment to open access. The data they collect is processed and made available to researchers, educators, and the public, creating a true digital commons for our shared history. Working in a different, yet equally vital, register is the Factum Foundation. While CyArk focuses on the macroscopic, capturing entire temples and landscapes, Factum Foundation is obsessed with the microscopic, the surface, the texture. Based in Madrid and led by artist Adam Lowe, Factum Foundation approaches digitization with the soul of a master conservator and the eye of a painter. Their specialty is ultra-high-resolution surface scanning, achieving a level of detail that borders on the miraculous. They developed their own proprietary scanner, the Lucida, which is specifically designed to capture the surface relief of artworks without being affected by color or shine. This is crucial for recording shallow carvings and faded inscriptions that are invisible to conventional photography. Their work in the Valley of the Kings, particularly in the tomb of Seti I, has produced a digital record of such stunning fidelity that it allowed them to create a physical, full-scale replica of the burial chamber that is so accurate it is used for scholarly study. This focus on tactile quality means that when you look at a Factum Foundation scan, you are not just seeing a picture of a wall. You are perceiving the depth of every chisel mark, the subtle wear of thousands of years, the very texture of history itself. Their philosophy is that a digital copy must be so good that it becomes a valid surrogate for the original, a concept that is revolutionizing both preservation and the public's ability to experience these fragile spaces. Beyond these established non-profits, the field is energized by a wave of individual innovators and university research labs pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Dr. Sarah Parcak, a space archaeologist and winner of the TD Prize, has pioneered the use of satellite imagery to discover thousands of potential archaeological sites across Egypt. Her work provides the crucial first step, identifying areas under threat from looting or development, which then allows ground-based scanning teams to prioritize their efforts. In university labs, researchers are developing AI algorithms that can automatically identify and classify objects within the massive 3D datasets, turning weeks of manual work into a task of minutes. There are also entrepreneurs developing new, more affordable scanning technologies. Startups are creating compact, smartphone-based LiDAR systems and user-friendly photogrammetry apps that could one day put the power of basic digitization into the hands of local heritage managers and even tourists, enabling a new era of crowd-sourced preservation. The evolution of the hardware itself is a story of relentless innovation. The first laser scanners used in archaeology were bulky, slow, and required perfect darkness to operate. Today's scanners are miracles of miniaturization and speed. Companies like Leica and Faro produce scanners that can be carried in a backpack, set up in minutes, and capture millions of points per second even in bright sunlight. The data processing software has undergone a similar revolution. What once required a room-sized supercomputer and weeks of computation can now be done on a powerful laptop in a matter of hours, thanks to advances in GPU processing and cloud computing. This acceleration is critical. It means that a team can scan a tomb in the morning, begin processing the data by the afternoon, and have a preliminary model ready for analysis by the next day, dramatically increasing the pace of the entire rescue mission. But capturing the data is only the first challenge. Preserving the digital files for centuries is the next great frontier. This is where companies specializing in durable data storage enter the narrative. Firms like Pickle are offering a fascinating solution, writing digital data onto ultra-stable, archival-grade photographic film. This film, stored in a secure, climate-controlled vault, is immune to the digital obsolescence that threatens hard drives and servers and can potentially last for 500 years or more. Other initiatives are exploring the use of synthetic DNA as a storage medium, encoding the entire digital record of a tomb into a microscopic speck of biological material that could endure for millennia. These futuristic solutions highlight the long-term thinking required for this project. It's not enough to create a digital copy. We must also ensure that the copy can survive the rise and fall of operating systems, the degradation of magnetic media, and the passage of centuries so that the digital pharaohs can truly live forever. The collaboration between the laser scanning pioneers, the surface detail artists, the software developers, and the archival scientists represents a holistic ecosystem of preservation, where each player contributes a critical piece to the puzzle of saving our past for the future. While the golden masks of the pharaohs capture the world's imagination, the true story of Egypt is written across millennia, a rich tapestry woven by countless cultures that rose and fell along the Nile. The digital rescue mission understands that to save only the royal tombs of the New Kingdom would be to preserve a single, brilliant chapter while leaving the rest of the book to crumble. This is why the scanning teams are venturing far beyond the Valley of the Kings, aiming their lasers and cameras at the magnificent legacies of the Nubians, the Greeks, the Romans, and the early Coptic Christians. These sites represent the other essential layers of Egypt's history, and they face threats just as severe, if not more so, due to their often lesser-known status. To the south, in what was once the Kingdom of Kush, lie the stunning pyramids of Nubia. Far more numerous than their Egyptian counterparts, these steep-sided structures at sites like Marere and Jebel Barkal are built of sandstone, a material far more vulnerable to wind and sand erosion than the hard limestone of Giza. For centuries, they have been slowly weathered into rounded mounds. Here, digitization is not just about preservation, it is about reclaiming a narrative. The Nubian kingdoms were not mere imitators of Egypt. They were powerful rivals and trading partners who ruled Egypt itself as the pharaohs of the 25th dynasty. By creating precise 3D models of their pyramids, temples, and intricate hieroglyphic inscriptions, which feature their own distinct language and gods, archaeologists can digitally reassemble collapsed structures and study the unique artistic styles that define this powerful African civilization. This work is correcting a long-standing bias in Egyptology, ensuring the digital arc carries the full, glorious story of the entire Nile Valley. Later, the arrival of Alexander the Great ushered in the Ptolemaic period, a fusion of Greek and Egyptian culture most famously embodied by Cleopatra VII. The capital moved to Alexandria, a city that became a beacon of learning, but whose ancient wonders now lie mostly submerged or buried beneath the modern metropolis. For these sites, digitization takes on an almost forensic quality. Teams use ground-penetrating radar and underwater drones to map the foundations of the legendary lighthouse of Alexandria and the city's royal quarters, which toppled into the sea after ancient earthquakes. By scanning the exquisite Greco-Roman frescoes in the catacombs of Qam el-Shakafa, where Egyptian motifs blend with Greek and Roman artistry, They preserve a unique testament to a society navigating a complex cultural identity. These scans capture a pivotal moment of globalization, a dialogue between civilizations etched into the stone of burial chambers and the statuary of hybrid gods like Serapis. Perhaps the most urgent work is being done to save the heritage of Egypt's Coptic Christian community, whose ancient churches and monasteries are repositories of a living faith and a critical link to the late antique world. In remote desert monasteries like St. Anthony's by the Red Sea, the walls are covered in layers of frescoes depicting saints and biblical scenes. These paintings, some dating back over 1,000 years, are suffering from humidity, salt damage, and in some cases, the well-intentioned but damaging application of modern paints by later generations. Hyperspectral imaging is proving invaluable here, allowing conservators to see through the overpainting to the original, delicate pigments beneath. The digitization of Coptic manuscripts written on fragile papyrus and parchment is another race against time. These texts, often stored in precarious conditions, contain not only theological works but also contracts, letters, and literature that offer an unparalleled window into daily life during the transition from the Roman Empire to the Islamic period. By creating high-resolution, searchable digital copies, scholars are ensuring that the voice of this enduring community is not silenced. This expansive view transforms the entire project from a rescue mission into a grand act of historical reconciliation. Each laser scan is a stitch that binds together the many layers of Egypt's past. A single site might reveal a temple originally built by a pharaoh, expanded by a Roman emperor, and later converted into a church by Coptic Christians, with inscriptions in hieroglyphs, Greek, Latin, and Coptic all existing side by side. The digital record allows us to peel back these layers non-destructively, to understand how each culture built upon and interpreted the ones that came before. It proves that Egypt's history is not a linear succession of isolated golden ages, but a continuous, interconnected story of human adaptation, belief, and artistic expression. By committing to preserve this entire mosaic, the digital ark becomes more than a collection of artifacts. It becomes a dynamic, multi-dimensional map of civilization itself, ensuring that future generations can explore not just the peaks of pharaonic power, but the entire, vast landscape of the human experience on the Nile. But even as teams work against the slow, persistent decay we've already seen, a far more aggressive and universal clock is ticking in the background, one set not by the natural passage of time, but by the relentless pace of global warming. The very climate that helped preserve these tombs for millennia by providing a stable, arid environment is now becoming their greatest enemy. Rising global temperatures are not just an abstract concept on a graph. They are delivering a cascade of direct physical assaults on Egypt's fragile archaeological sites, dramatically shortening the timeline for their survival and supercharging the urgency of the digital rescue mission. The most immediate impact is the intensification of the desert's own natural cycles. The Egyptian climate has always experienced significant temperature swings between day and night. This cycle of expansion and contraction as the stone heats and cools is a slow, natural form of stress, but with average temperatures climbing, the peaks are getting higher and the amplitude of the swing is widening. The limestone and sandstone of the tombs are now subjected to more extreme thermal stress than they have endured in over 3,000 years. This relentless expansion and contraction, season after season, is widening existing cracks at an accelerated rate and creating new microfissures that allow moisture and salts to penetrate even deeper into the heart of the monuments. It's as if the stone itself is being subjected to a low-grade fever, weakening its structural integrity from within. Then come the extreme weather events, once rare in the hyper-arid desert, but now occurring with frightening frequency. In 2020, a sudden, violent storm dumped torrential rain on the archaeological site of Tel Giza in the Nile Delta, causing the collapse of mud brick walls that had stood for centuries. While the desert tombs are farther from the rain, they are not immune. Flash floods triggered by intense rainfall in distant highlands can channel devastating torrents of water through desert valleys or wadis that have been dry for generations. These floods don't just bring water, they carry an abrasive slurry of sand and rocks, scouring the entrances to tombs and burying them under debris. The increased frequency of these events means that a site that was safe for a century could be catastrophically damaged in a single, unpredictable afternoon, giving conservators no time to erect protective barriers or initiate emergency scans. Perhaps the most insidious long-term threat comes from a source that might seem distant from the desert valleys, the rising Mediterranean Sea. A significant portion of Egypt's irreplaceable heritage is not in the desert but along the fertile Nile Delta, a low-lying region that was the heartland of ancient Egypt for much of its history. Sites like the ruins of the city of Tanis, once the capital of Egypt and home to royal tombs rivaling those in the Valley of the Kings, are now under direct threat from saltwater intrusion. As sea levels rise, saltwater is pushing inland, infiltrating the groundwater. This saline groundwater then wicks up into the foundations of ancient structures through capillary action, a process known as rising damp. Once inside the masonry, the salts crystallize, exerting the same destructive force we see in the Valley of the Kings, but on a massive, landscape-wide scale. The very ground upon which these delta cities are built is becoming a corrosive sponge, threatening to dissolve mud-brick palaces and stone temples from the foundations upward. For these sites, the battle isn't just against the air, it's against the earth itself. This confluence of threats creates a devastating feedback loop. Higher temperatures increase evaporation rates, which draws more saline groundwater up into the walls of delta sites. At the same time, the increased thermal stress in the desert makes the stone more porous and vulnerable to any moisture that does arrive, whether from a rare rain shower or the breath of a tourist. Climate change is not a single problem but a multiplier of every existing form of decay, compressing processes that once unfolded over centuries into a matter of decades. This new reality has forced a fundamental shift in the strategy of the digitization teams. It's no longer enough to prioritize tombs based on their current condition or artistic significance. They must now also create a triage list based on climate vulnerability. A lesser-known tomb in the flood path of a changing wadi might suddenly leapfrog a more famous one on the scanning schedule, simply because its window of preservation could slam shut with the next major storm. The digital race has entered a new, more desperate phase where the climate clock is ticking louder than ever before. But capturing this mountain of data is only the first step. The true challenge lies in making sense of it all, and this is where the mission is undergoing its most profound transformation, moving from digital documentation to intelligent discovery with the help of artificial intelligence. Think of the previous technologies, the LiDAR, the photogrammetry, as creating an infinitely detailed digital fossil. Artificial intelligence is now the tool that allows us to bring that fossil to life, to teach it to speak, and to point out secrets that our own eyes are simply too limited to see. We are entering an era where the tombs themselves are becoming active participants in their own interpretation, with AI acting as the translator. The most immediate and powerful application of this technology is in the realm of epigraphy, the study of ancient inscriptions. For an Egyptologist, manually translating the hieroglyphs in a single tomb can be the work of a lifetime, requiring painstaking comparison of each symbol against known grammatical rules and dictionaries. Now, imagine an AI model that has been trained on hundreds of thousands of already translated hieroglyphic texts. This algorithm can be unleashed on the high-resolution scans of a newly documented tomb. In a matter of hours, it can scan every wall, identifying and translating the text far faster than any human team. But its genius goes beyond simple speed. The AI isn't just matching shapes, it's learning context. It can recognize a partially eroded symbol based on the characters that surround it, much like your smartphone's keyboard predicts your next word. It can identify the specific cursive style of a particular dynasty or even an individual scribe, offering clues about the date and origin of the inscription that might otherwise be missed. This doesn't replace the Egyptologist, it supercharges them, freeing them from the tedious work of initial transcription and allowing them to focus on the higher-level analysis of the text's meaning, its religious significance, and its place in history. Beyond translation, AI is proving to be an unparalleled conservator's assistant, capable of predicting decay before it even becomes visible to the human eye. These machine learning systems are being trained on vast datasets that pair scans of tombs from different time periods. By analyzing these chronological sequences, the AI learns the subtle visual signatures of ongoing damage. It can detect a minuscule change in the width of a crack between two scans taken a year apart, a shift so small it would be imperceptible even to a trained conservator with a magnifying glass. More impressively, it can analyze the texture and color of a painted surface and flag areas that exhibit the early, microscopic patterns of salt crystallization or microbial growth, often long before any flaking or discoloration occurs. This predictive capability is a game changer for preservation. It allows conservation teams to move from a reactive stance repairing damage after it happens to a proactive one, targeting their limited resources precisely where they are needed most, implementing preventative measures to save a section of wall years or even decades before it would have been considered a lost cause. The most thrilling potential of AI, however, lies in its ability to see the unseen, to infer what lies behind the decorated surfaces we can observe. The discovery of hidden chambers in Tutankhamun's tomb using radar scans sparked global fascination, but that process was manual and interpretation-heavy. AI can take this concept to a new level. By training on the known architectural plans of hundreds of Egyptian tombs, an algorithm can learn the typical layout, the common ratios of corridor length to chamber size, and the standard placement of storage rooms. When this AI then analyzes the precise LiDAR point cloud of a seemingly complete tomb, it can identify subtle anomalies, areas where the thickness of a wall doesn't match the expected pattern, or where the laser data suggests a minute, unexplained void space behind a decorated surface. It can essentially run millions of architectural simulations, comparing the scanned tomb against every known design template and highlighting statistical outliers that might indicate a sealed-off passage or an undiscovered room. This turns the AI into a digital divining rod not based on superstition, but on a deep, probabilistic understanding of ancient Egyptian engineering principles. It offers the tantalizing possibility that the next great discovery in the Valley of the Kings might not be made by a person with a trowel, but by lines of code running on a computer, pointing a virtual finger at a section of rock and saying, "Look here." This monumental effort along the Nile is far more than a singular rescue mission for one nation's treasures. It has become a revolutionary blueprint, a proven playbook for safeguarding cultural heritage across the entire planet. The unique challenges presented by Egypt's tombs, their sheer number, their environmental fragility, the complexity of their art, have forced innovators to develop solutions that are now being adapted and deployed from the jungles of Central America to the ash-preserved streets of Italy. The race in the Valley of the Kings has effectively become a global training ground, creating a new standard for how we approach the preservation of our shared human story. The methodologies perfected in the sweltering heat of Egyptian burial chambers are proving to be remarkably universal. Take, for instance, the combination of LiDAR and photogrammetry. In the dense rainforests of Guatemala, this very same technology is being used to map the sprawling Maya city of Tikal. While the challenges are different, mapping vast, jungle-canopied pyramids instead of confined, subterranean tombs, the core principle is identical. Teams fly LiDAR-equipped drones over the forest, whose laser pulses penetrate the thick canopy to reveal the precise contours of temples, plazas, and roadways hidden for centuries beneath the vegetation. Back on the ground, photogrammetry captures the intricate carvings on stelae and altars, preserving the detailed depictions of Maya kings and gods from the relentless humidity and encroaching plant life. The workflow from day to capture to processing to the creation of an analyzable 3D model is directly imported from the Egyptian desert, demonstrating that the digital preservation toolkit is not site-specific but fundamentally adaptable. The collaborative model pioneered in Egypt, which brings together government authorities, international academics, and technology companies, is also being replicated with great success. Consider the ongoing work at Pompeii. The ancient Roman city faces a constant battle against the elements, with delicate frescoes fading under the Mediterranean sun and structures weakened by seismic activity. Inspired by the Egyptian projects, the Pompeii Sustainable Preservation Project has adopted a similarly collaborative framework. Archaeologists from around Europe work alongside Italian conservators using hyperspectral imaging, the same technology that reveals hidden hieroglyphs, to analyze the chemical composition of Pompeian wall paintings, identifying the original Roman pigments and detecting areas of underlying damage invisible to the naked eye. This international pooling of expertise and resources, a model refined through the complex partnerships required to work in Egypt, is proving essential for managing a site of Pompeii's immense scale and complexity. Perhaps the most profound export of the Egyptian model is the shift in philosophy it represents, a move from reactive restoration to proactive, preemptive digital capture. For centuries, the approach to heritage sites was often to wait until damage occurred and then attempt a difficult, expensive, and sometimes invasive repair. The Egyptian mission has championed the opposite idea: scan everything now in its current state to create a permanent baseline. This digital insurance policy is now being applied to sites under immediate and severe threat. In Syria and Iraq, teams associated with organizations like CyArk have undertaken emergency digitization projects at sites like Palmyra and Nimrud, which were deliberately targeted for destruction by extremist groups. Using the same rapid scanning techniques developed for Egyptian tombs, they captured precise 3D records of the ruins after the destruction, but also leveraged older satellite imagery and tourist photographs to create digital reconstructions of what was lost. This heartbreaking work provides a foundation for future restoration efforts, should they become possible, and more importantly, ensures that even if the physical stones are pulverized, their memory and dimensions are saved for history. This practice of creating a digital ark before disaster strikes is a direct legacy of the urgent lessons learned in Egypt. The impact even extends to living cultures and sites that are still in use. In Southeast Asia, the vast temple complex of Angkor Wat in Cambodia is suffering from groundwater extraction and increased tourist traffic. Here, the Egyptian-inspired approach is being used not just for preservation but for active management. The detailed 3D models allow conservators to monitor subtle subsidence and structural stress across the massive site, enabling them to direct physical reinforcements to the most critical areas before a collapse occurs. Furthermore, the data is used to create virtual tourism experiences that help manage the flow of physical visitors, reducing wear and tear on the most vulnerable areas. This demonstrates how the Egyptian model evolves, moving beyond simple preservation to become an integral tool for sustainable cultural management, ensuring that these places can be appreciated by generations to come without being loved to death. This global replication confirms that the work in Egypt is not an isolated endeavor but a paradigm shift in our relationship with the past. The technologies may have been refined in the land of the pharaohs, but their true value lies in their universal application. From the stone circles of Britain to the terracotta armies of China, heritage sites everywhere face their own versions of the slow decay seen in the Valley of the Kings. The Egyptian project has provided the world with a shared language and a proven set of tools to fight back. It has shown that through international cooperation and technological innovation, we can create a global safety net for our collective memory, ensuring that no matter what the future brings, be it climate change, conflict, or simply the inexorable passage of time, the wonders of human civilization will have a permanent and perfectly detailed digital afterlife. This ultimate goal, the dream of a complete digital library of Thebes, is about far more than just creating a secure backup of individual tombs. It is an ambitious vision to weave these isolated digital threads into a single, breathtaking tapestry, resurrecting the entire sacred landscape as a living, interconnected whole. Imagine a virtual command center, a scholarly interface where a researcher can zoom out from a single hieroglyph in the tomb of a scribe to see that entire tomb, then pull back further to see every other tomb in the Valley of the Nobles, and further still to view the entire Theban necropolis spread out on the computer screen, with each of its thousands of burial sites accurately plotted. Their precise geographical relationship to one another. This interconnected digital library would transform our understanding from studying isolated sentences to reading the entire book of the ancient city of the dead. The power of this approach lies in its ability to reveal patterns and relationships that are utterly invisible when examining one tomb at a time. For instance, an Egyptologist could query the system to map the distribution of a specific religious symbol, say, the god Anubis overseeing a scales of justice across every single documented tomb from a particular dynasty. The results might show a fascinating concentration of this motif in the tombs of viziers and judges, clustered in a specific area of the necropolis, while being absent from the tombs of military generals located just a few hundred meters away. This would reveal not just personal piety, but the professional and social networks that defined the ancient bureaucracy, showing how religious iconography was used to signal membership in a specific elite class. The digital library becomes a time machine for social history, allowing us to trace the flow of ideas and artistic conventions across the ancient community. Furthermore, this system could analyze architectural data on a grand scale. By comparing the precise dimensions, axial alignments, and construction techniques of hundreds of tombs, algorithms could identify distinct schools of architects or detect the subtle influence of a particular pharaoh's building projects on the private tombs constructed during his reign. We might discover that a change in the angle of a descending corridor, previously thought to be arbitrary, was actually a technical innovation introduced by the chief architect of Ramesses II and then widely copied by the nobility, creating a chronological marker that helps date otherwise anonymous burials. The library would allow us to see the necropolis not as a random collection of sepulchres, but as a dynamic, evolving urban plan, where each new tomb was a conscious response to what had been built before it. The dream extends beyond tombs to include every facet of the landscape. The digital models of the grand temples like Karnak and Luxor on the east bank of the Nile would be seamlessly integrated with the tombs on the west bank. A scholar could then trace the processional routes of ancient festivals, virtually following the bark of the god Amun as it traveled from its sanctuary across the river and into the mortuary temples of the pharaohs, understanding how the world of the living and the world of the dead were ritually connected. The system could even incorporate environmental data, modeling the ancient flood levels of the Nile to understand how the river's annual cycle dictated the construction schedule and accessibility of the tombs cut into the cliffs. This holistic view finally allows us to study the Theban landscape as the ancient Egyptians themselves experienced it, a single, integrated domain where geography, religion, and daily life were inextricably linked. Achieving this dream is the driving force behind the current global effort, a unifying goal that gives purpose to the painstaking work of scanning each individual crack and pigment. It represents a fundamental shift in the very nature of Egyptology, from a science of fragments to a science of systems. While the physical tombs will continue to slowly fade, their digital symphony played across the entire necropolis will only grow richer and more revealing with each new discovery, ensuring that the silent city of Thebes will continue to speak its secrets for centuries to come. So, where does this immense undertaking leave us? We began with a single breath threatening a 3,000-year-old painting, and we've journeyed through a world where lasers and algorithms are building a fortress of light around our shared past. The fundamental truth is now undeniable. The physical survival of these ancient wonders can no longer be guaranteed. The tombs, once thought to be eternal, are locked in a silent, losing battle against humidity, salt, the pressure of tourism, and the accelerating force of climate change. But in the face of this fragility, humanity has responded with one of its most noble traits, ingenuity. We are not merely documenting decay, we are orchestrating a digital resurrection. We have developed the tools to capture the soul of a place, to preserve not just its image but its precise geometry, its vibrant surface, and even the hidden secrets lying beneath its faded pigments. This is not a story of technology alone. It is a story of unprecedented global collaboration. Archaeologists, engineers, data scientists, and conservators from every corner of the world are uniting with the Egyptian people in a common cause. Universities, governments, private foundations, and even citizen scientists at their home computers are all contributing to this vast, distributed effort. The digital ark is being built brick by digital brick through a collective will that transcends borders, languages, and disciplines. It is a powerful testament to what we can achieve when we recognize that some treasures are so precious they belong not to one nation but to all of humanity. And this is where the responsibility falls to each of us. You might not operate a laser scanner or translate a hieroglyph, but you have a role in this story. Your interest, your curiosity, is the very reason this work matters. By choosing to learn about this mission, by sharing these stories, you are adding your voice to a global chorus that says our history is worth saving. Support the museums and institutions that fund this research. Follow the work of organizations dedicated to digital preservation. Encourage the educators who bring this ancient world to life for the next generation. This is not a passive endeavor. It is an active partnership between the experts in the field and a worldwide audience that values our collective heritage. The race to digitize Egypt's tombs is more than an archaeological project. It is a profound statement about time and memory. It is our generation's gift to the future. We are creating a library that will outlast the very stones it records, ensuring that a child born 1,000 years from now will still be able to walk the painted halls of Seti I's tomb, to gaze upon the golden mask of Tutankhamun, and to hear the whispers of scribes and artisans who lived at the dawn of history. We are the bridge between a vanishing past and an infinite digital future. The pharaohs built their monuments for eternity, and now, through our shared effort, we are granting them that wish. The responsibility is immense, but so is the privilege. We have the power to ensure that these wonders do not fade into silence, but continue to speak their secrets forever.